As I mentioned earlier, what we were trying to do with this thing is we're trying to get the elements to sort of twist. That was what I named this thing, which was this twisting form. And so we want to create these elements that are twisting, and so we're going to have them rotate. Okay? So again, we're going to use the same rotate that we used before. So it's that one right there, rotate. So if I double click and type in rotate, please watch what's going on and then work from there, okay? So we're going to take the rotate command and look at it. It says, oh, feed the geometry in. Now, before I feed the geometry in, right, well, part of what I want you guys to do, Daniel, Tran, Lauren, if I don't see your eyes, that means you're doing something, which means that what I'm covering, you're not listening to, okay? All right. So geometry. Well, the geometry is this, but remember that I told you that we would constantly use panels to kind of look at what's going on with something? So if you look at this panel right here, you see that this is something. What is this called? I'm not asking what the component is. I'm asking what this data structure is called. It's a list. So as he just said, it is a list. Zinhu's got it right. Okay. A tree is a list of lists. So there would be multiple of these, right? So this is just a simple list. All right, so we'll zoom back out. And so we know the geometry. So I'm going to take this geometry and feed it into here. Okay. So now, again, same thing we did before when we used rotate before. We've got to, kind of tell it, all right, well, we want to work in radians. And so I can either right-click and set it to degrees, or I can, do the radians conversion. So just for the sake of clarity, that's what I'm going to do, is put that right in there. And then I'm going to put something feeding into it. So let's try 0 less than 300, or let's go 90 degrees. Probably don't want to rotate more than 90. All right, so I'll feed that in. So this thing lights up, and if I do that, right, you notice where it's rotating from, right? So once again, we've got this plane that is the center of rotation. So now we gotta zoom out and find that plane. Where is that plane? Oh, there it is. So I'm going to, oops, I gotta zoom out to where I can see all of it. I'm gonna grab that plane and feed it back into that one. Right? Now when I rotate it, it's rotating. Now I want you guys to notice something about the rotation. Right? They're all rotating together. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking to have them sequentially rotate. Okay? So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to let you guys go ahead. Well, let's keep going. Okay? So in order to get them to sequentially rotate, we are going to have to do something that kind of limits that rotation. Okay? So we're going to construct what's called a domain or a range. Okay? That's going to set that amount of rotation that it's possible. All right? And I believe we've already done that, right? I think we did in the previous.
No.
We didn't set a domain? Or set a range?
We set range before.
We did set a range.
Yeah, but we just said that
All right, so there's range. Select range, drop it onto here. Okay? If we want to know where it is, hold down Control-Alt, hit the range key, and you'll notice that it's under sets, under sequence. So it's in the same place that we had looked earlier for something. Okay? All right, so here we go. We're going to take the range, and now we need to read range. Okay? So when we read range, I'm going to connect it up here for now, and that'll disconnect this number slider. I'll move that kind of down here. It doesn't really do anything, right? Because it doesn't have this information. So domain, right? So we set the domain. I can't remember what we set it. We set it. We set a domain in relationship to the circle size.
Yeah.
All right? And we said, well, the smallest circle we would ever want is this big, and the biggest one we would want is this big. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to construct a domain for that. All right, and for the domain is going to control the rotation angle of each subsequent plane, right? So why don't we set that number slider so that it's at 90? So I don't know what it, oh, it's already at 90, so that's fine. We had already done that. All right, so let's construct a domain. That's not it. Oh, there it is, construct domain. All right, so again, if we hold down Control Alt and click on this, you're going to see that it's under Math. We already done this once, okay? And so if you remember, the domain required two numbers as input, okay? So the start number and the end number. So for the start number, we can just use 0, and I think it might already have a value of 0 in there, right? But in order to kind of make it clear, why don't we put in a little panel, right? And that way we can type a 0 into it. Shrink it way up and feed the 0 into the domain start. Okay, that'll be just like a little thing to give you some memory as to how it works. Right, the next thing that we'll do is we'll take the number slider and feed it into the domain n number. All right, so if we put a panel here and feed this in, right, so it's going from 0, 0 to 0, 0. So if we take this thing and slide it across, you'll see that that second number changes. Right? And so that's how we construct a variable domain. Before we didn't construct a variable domain. We just constructed a singular domain from 0 to, I don't know, from 0.25 to 1.5 or something like that. Okay? All right. So that is going to feed into domain. I'm going to delete this panel. I don't need it. Okay? So there's one next thing that's sort of required, and that is the steps. Right? So if we look at steps, it's looking for a number. So if we, for example, take this thing, which is the number slider for count in series, and feed it into that, we can now start to see that as we change the value of the domain, I'm zoomed in out too far, we can now rotate a maximum of 90 degrees. Okay? There is one problem here. And the problem that we have here is that the number of these things exceeds the number of elements that we have, and so we do have to subtract one of these out. Right now, let's keep going, and we'll see the result of that afterwards. Okay? So I'm going to pause this, or I'm going to stop it and let you guys kind of go through that process.